All right, we are back with your favorite podcast show of the week. And this week. No, it's not. This is Location Weekly. See, I almost caught myself there. Anyhow, it's Location Weekly, episode number 454. See, like it's been so many years of the old name. It's still taking me time. It's taking me time. But anyhow, Location Weekly, episode 454. And we're recording live on March the 3rd. Brianna, how are you? You're back home in Atlanta?
I am. I'm home for this week. I'm actually not traveling, which is nice. It's the first week I've been home in like a month for an entire week. So looking forward to just catching up on things here in the office. It is gloomy and rainy here in Atlanta. It's like we're kind of going back and forth between, this 50 to 60 degree rainy weather or sunny and 20 to 30 degree weather. And so, I think spring's right around the corner here, which means pollen will be here soon. But just trying to stay cheerful in the gloom, which you see behind me.
Yeah, we're pretty much in the same boat here in Toronto. It's been it's raining today. It's like 50 degrees. The weekend was cold and sunny with snow on the ground. So yeah, it's sort of back and forth. And it's kind of like everybody's got a cold or something, or hopefully not coronavirus, I don't know. There's just a lot of, it's the sort of middle of the winter. Let's be done with it and kind of get into spring and summer, right? But the baseball season has, preseason anyways, has begun, so that's good. It's, my team's doing okay. The young guys are doing okay, so that's good. So there's something to look forward to.
Yes, always. And a good show. That's to look forward to as well.
Yeah. So why don't you kick us off with our industry news for this week?
All right. Well, we've been talking a lot about privacy implications and location data sharing and what does that mean? We've had a lot of new legislations come into place. But not everybody likes to play by the rules. And I would say that some of these companies are just a little bit greedy here. So we've got 4 main ones that have been called out by the FCC for carriers here in the US. And FCC has proposed, they just proposed on Friday that these 4, top 4 carriers get hit with some pretty hefty fines. I mean, hefty fines to you and me, hefty fines in light of what their annual revenue is, not so much. So T-Mobile's facing 91 million or more, AT&T 57 million, Verizon 48 million, Sprint more than 12 million. But when you're looking at the fact that these companies are making between 12 and 47 billion dollars annually, this is not much of a fine. It's more of a slap on the wrist. So the FCC started investigating these companies back in May of 2018 to try and figure out, what are they doing with their location data? And so they found that a lot of them were, in fact, selling it to aggregators. And carriers kept saying that they had stopped doing this, but the investigations proved that they had not. They were continuing to sell it. And then there's a lot of consumer advocates that are out there and they're pointing the finger at the FCC because, that changed control to kind of Republican hands not so long ago. And when that happened, they had reversed rolled back the net neutrality that had been put in place in 2015. They rolled it back in 2017. And so, they rolled back those rules as well that went with that. And so they're kind of saying because of this, the fines and the penalties and, the privacy protections have been relaxed for too long and it's taking them too long to do something about it. And for me, the big difference here is that when you have an app, right, that needs to be monetized and they want to leverage location data in order to sell advertising or provide a more relevant experience or value. To me, that's a huge difference from somebody that you as a consumer are already paying for, right? You are paying for the service, with, cold hard earned cash.
Yeah.
And now they are making money off of you, you know, 2 times over because they're selling your location data that you did not necessarily authorize them to do. Or maybe you did it in fine print, but they're selling your location data, and they are also, you know, charging you whatever you're paying on that monthly basis, you know, for connectivity. So, you know, I think that if consumers are willing to share data and get something of value in return, we talk about that all the time, then that's an okay use of location data and being able to sell that or leverage that, as long as you were very clear with what you were doing to your end consumers. But this is just, you know, it's wrong and it's greedy and it's gross, and it just gives the whole, I would say, the entire ecosystem a bad name whenever there's a lot of good use that could be put with this data for audiences and not maybe for some sheriff in Missouri to find whoever he's trying to find. So
Yeah,
that's my rant.
yeah. So I completely agree with everything you've said. And I'll start with sort of the fines. I mean, for me, the fines are, you know, they are a slap on the wrist. I mean, these companies, one of these 4 companies I happen to know, just on location data monetization alone, is making, you know, close to $1 billion. You know, so, you know, 40, 50 million fine, you know, whatever, but it's really nothing in comparison to the amount of money that they're potentially making off of this type of data. It is about consent. It is about, you know, that exchange of value, like you talk about. But at the same time, you know, I'm, you know, the more I hear about, you know, whether it's the New York Times article that we've covered before, or, you know, these sort of, you know, sort of hyper extended views of invasions of people's privacy, the more I worry about it, because, and I'll bring it back to, you know, I'm not saying what they did is right, you know, and maybe it is in the fine print, maybe people have consented to it, but like at least find a way to sort of bring people more into the conversation of understanding how they can participate in that. That's the one side of it. In terms of the data collection aspect of things, though, while we're on this topic, I want to kind of raise a point that is something that's was driven home to me here in Toronto this past week. So, like everywhere, you know, we've got our share of coronavirus cases going on in the city. There's a woman who came back from Iran last week on several flights, and then took a public bus to get from the airport to where she was going. And so they're really concerned about trying to find all the people who were on this bus. Now, here's the thing. In Ontario, like this particular bus line, you know, the way you pay to get on is using a card that we have called Presto Card here. And you basically, it's a loadable card, like a Starbucks card kind of thing, and you tap it, you know, and it draws down from the balance. It has some data about the owner and so on and so forth associated with it. And the cool thing was, I read like that they're actually able to now like go and see from the use of this card who was on the bus at that particular time, and be able to use that data to track these people down to, you know, assess whether or not they've been exposed to this. And so there you go. Like to me, here's an incredibly valuable use case of that data that people would complain about, you know, the privacy issues around that. And yet, you know, do they want to know if they've been exposed to coronavirus? Yeah, absolutely they do, right? And so I think there's all these interesting things that we haven't even contemplated yet in terms of the value of that data, and just people being aware that their data is out there. I think they just have to accept it in today's age, right? But being able to find ways to understand the value proposition, articulate that value proposition, even participate in the monetization of their data is where we need to put the focus, because it's being collected. You know, we're not going to stop that. It's being collected, and there's huge amount of value in it for everybody, including the consumer. So that's all I can say.
Your point.
All right. Okay. On to the second industry news story. So Apple is working on a new service. It's called Car Key. That's one word. And basically, they're testing it now in iOS 13.4, which got released a few weeks ago in a limited beta. And essentially, they're working with car manufacturers to be able to use your iPhone or your Apple Watch as a way to unlock your car and even remotely start your car. And so it's sort of building that integration in. The other cool thing is because it's a sort of secure token type of engagement in terms of the way that they do it, is that you would have the ability to also share a digital key essentially to your car with others. So let's say another family member or whatever, they don't have to have the physical key with them. You can actually share a key with them or something like that, or you get locked out or whatever the case might be. So I think this is kind of an interesting feature. It's a neat little service for Apple to start playing around with for their customers. And I think for the car companies, a neat way to do that. Like, I mean, with my car currently, I have an app from the car manufacturer that I can remotely start and control temperature and all of that. But being able to just do that with my watch or my phone directly, being able to share that with others, I think it has some value in it. So I think this could be quite an interesting service, moving forward.
Yeah, I think this is interesting. I kind of also thought about the fact that would this maybe give the opportunity for people to like steal cars a little bit easier, where you can use somebody's phone and face to make them open the car for you or drive you, somewhere, whatever that might be, without the need for a physical key. I don't know, but I do think that the idea of being able to share a digital key with somebody, maybe something that's temporal, would be really interesting, right?
Yeah.
I think about that maybe more for like my home versus something else. So you have out of town visitors, they want to be able to come and go. You don't maybe have extra keys for everybody, but you have the ability to share a digital key with them.
Or Airbnb rentals.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I know that I just stayed in an Airbnb this past week and, it just had like the code keypad, which was great. It was easy to get in and out. I didn't ever have to see anybody or, deal with that. But, the idea of being able to actually confirm that this person is who they say they are, through Airbnb or through, the car manufacturer or through, whoever your home security system is, I think is really smart. And I like the idea that Apple sort of controls the facial recognition part because we're already sharing that with them and not having to kind of involve more external sources and just being able to tap into that, I think is really smart. So I feel like they could do a lot with that in terms of how they could expand that offering with, tons of different things.
Yeah, very cool.
Even walking into the office instead of having to use a key fob, right?
Yeah, that would be amazing. So,
yeah. All right. Well, we're going to kind of go in a little bit of a different direction now and talk about a true, advertising campaign for Adidas. And Adidas is going to be leveraging WhatsApp now to connect with their key consumers. So, WhatsApp has a huge reach, owned by Facebook, but, run pretty separately, and they have over 1.5 billion active users across 180 countries. So, their reach goes beyond, device type and, language spoken. And I think that, outside of the US, WhatsApp is a very, very popular way of communication. And so, I mean, even within the US, but I would say outside it has more of a foothold. But they have, there's over 3 million businesses that are using WhatsApp right now to connect with their, sort of key consumers. And so what Adidas is doing is they're going to be engaging influencers, athletes, and other brands to sort of operate as their, salespeople promoting their products in their WhatsApp, I guess, kind of groups. And so they did a recent campaign in the UK, which was interesting. And so Adidas opened up this chat hotline for unreliable, like if you were playing on they said football, but I'm assuming this is soccer here. So if you're playing on a soccer team that, maybe you had some unreliable players, Adidas sponsored like players could come and show up at your event. And so they had like winners, decked out in all this Adidas gear that would just show up and sort of like be your go-to wingman there. So I think that's really, really funny. But what they talk about in the article is how, WhatsApp has extremely high open rates, probably similar to text message, and the closest thing to that would be email. But, when you're looking at like 97% open rates and things of that nature, I think that's like you're looking at very high engagement. So, I think this is in a time where data is very questionable and first party data is so valuable, and trying to, come up with creative ways to reach your valuable consumers, I think this is really smart. I think this is spot on, and likely works well in my opinion. I think that you're still, a brand even like Adidas for, growth, in terms of new customer acquisition. I think you're still going to have to look at external audience and external data, but rather than investing their money in just more ads, Adidas has chosen to sort of go this path and engage organically with their most valuable, fans. And they also recently did this partnership with Spotify, which was interesting, where they could tap into the accelerometer on your phone to see how fast you were running. And then they could play certain songs based upon that, that would be like the right beat for you to be running to. So they're looking at ways to engage with consumers, across different platforms, and, ways that they can sort of leverage who their consumers are at the heart, whether they're runners or, soccer players. And I think it's pretty cool. I think that trying to find unique ways to engage is always the number one thing that a brand has to do, and they have to keep iterating. And so I think that these two things are good.
Yeah, so completely agree with you again on this. I mean, for me, the beauty of using WhatsApp, like text messaging, is reach, right? I mean, you've got millions, billions of people, 1.5 billion people in 180 countries on WhatsApp. So, your ability to reach a lot of people all at once is really great. Now, for me, the one thing that I would like to see, because I don't have a lot to add to what you say, I completely agree with it, but I'd like to see them leverage like geolocation a little more specifically in some of the campaigns and the engagement that they're doing here. You might remember, I think it was 2 years ago now at Coachella, Adidas, again, same brand, did a campaign there with Donald Glover, and where they gave away, sort of limited edition Adidas sneakers, but they were based on using AirDrop in this case on the iPhone platform. So basically, people who were in close proximity within AirDrop range, basically, they kind of pushed out a message. You could respond to that, sort of participate in the contest for a chance to win these kind of limited edition things. And I think in a lot of ways, you could use WhatsApp, from a geo perspective, to engage people with, more local, sort of campaign specific things that are, more geographically targeted, and have even higher levels of engagement, and sort of, fan base and so on. So, but I love what they're doing. I'm not knocking at all what they're doing. I think, for me, there's probably yet another step of even getting higher engagement and just being more targeted in what they're doing by using location data. So, but kudos to them for this. It's the reach is amazing. So.
Yeah, I think that, you're right. They have done stuff in the past, like with the Adidas Drop. I think they did the Yeezy, shoe, where you had to be like you could try to be one of the first to be able to purchase the shoe, but you had to be in a specific geo fence, or, actually, like, it wasn't really a geo fence, but it was a boundary that you had to be in. And, I think that there's good use cases for both, right? So like something along the lines of, come help out our soccer team, like that should be very geo focused.
Yeah.
Whereas something for me about getting a new shoe should be less geo focused and more just about reach. So I think that, even recently in a lot of the conversations I've been having with agencies, location is not something that they're always keen on, because a lot of the brands that they're working for just have global reach, right? So a lot of it is more about just, impressions or engagement. And I think that they kind of sometimes can miss the mark when they don't bring location into that. And also having a core understanding of where you're doing really well and where your messaging is resonating, and where it's not, just from a measurement perspective and how you maybe plan for campaigns in the future. Messaging in one location may not resonate the same that it will in another location. And I think that that's a big opportunity for agencies and brands to improve with these types of advertising initiatives. So, yeah.
There you go. Well, so that's our 3 industry news stories for this week. Now, before we jump into member news, you've been traveling recently, and you have a bit of an update on a story that we covered a little while ago.
I do. I was looking back this morning to see when we covered it, and it was, I think, January 21st episode. We talked about how Delta was rolling out some new features in their app and how they were going to be integrating with Lyft. Well, recently, last week when I was traveling, I had a notification that said, "Hey, you can pair your Lyft now with your Delta SkyMiles account and earn SkyMiles." And I'm like, awesome. Okay. So I've always kind of gone back and forth between Lyft and Uber, and, just kind of seen like, who can I get a ride for quickly, typically in business situations. But to me, this is definitely pushing me more towards Lyft. So I already started earning SkyMiles, and I can see them coming through on my Delta app. Like each Lyft ride, it's 100 SkyMiles here, 75 here, and all those trips really add up. So I think that that's a great feature that Delta has rolled out. I love that. And it was nice to actually feel like for once I get rewarded for something from SkyMiles besides just, being able to redeem them for a flight, once a year or however often. So I was excited about that.
Yeah, I think, like Uber also, they, been pushing on kind of the rewards side of the program, but, having those types of deeper integrations with partners that are sort of, in the same horizontal area of travel, makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I was quite happy when you said, hey, I actually used this thing. I tried it out. It worked. So that's good. All right, so on to our member news now. First of our three stories this week, KFC, that's Kentucky Fried Chicken, right here in Canada actually is doing some interesting things. So they have integrated ordering with Google Maps search and Google Assistant. And this is kind of interesting. So basically what they're saying is you can kind of like, as you search for fried chicken or whatever you're searching for on Google, and KFC comes up, you can actually order directly through the search, functions in Maps or Search or Google Assistant. And you can even use voice. And they've taken the even further step with their brand in particular here in Canada. So you can you basically have that conversation directly with Colonel Sanders. So they've got the voice of Colonel Sanders speaking, powered by AI technology in the background. So it's kind of fun. I'm going to have to give it a try. Honestly, I'm not a big KFC, like fried chicken person. But every once in a while, like maybe twice a year, like we'll do that kind of thing. So maybe I'll give this a shot in the next couple of weeks and see, especially if I get grounded and I'm not traveling because of coronavirus. I'll have to ground myself and drown my sorrows in a bucket of
Fried chicken.
of Kentucky Fried Chicken. So there you go.
Yeah, it's funny. Growing up, like we didn't really eat a ton of KFC, but every once in a while, I remember we would go to, Sunday church, and then after church, it would be, my mom was like an amazing cook growing up, and she always just cooked homemade, gourmet food. And so every once in a while she was ready to not cook. And so it was like my dad's treat to her that we would get like a bucket of fried chicken and some sides on a Sunday. But I think that that's like the last time I've really, enjoyed KFC. But I think my dad will be like, if he was, raising young kids now, he would be all over this ordering. Although it may not be KFC, it'd probably be like Popeyes.
Popeyes, yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, you know what? So one of my memories from childhood of KFC, because like similarly, we used to, probably have it more often when I was a kid. I can remember a similar type of experience, but I don't know, like they don't have it now, I don't think. But when I was a kid, KFC used to also have like loaves of bread, and they would like be pre-sliced and buttered and hot. Like you'd get this hot like loaf of bread, and I don't know what it was, but that bread was really good. I remember, and I don't think they have that anymore. But yeah, it was something. It's sort of like it disappeared, back when like McDonald's used to have pizza too. So
that's funny.
So anyhow, all right.
Okay, so we were talking about Lyft. Now we're talking about Uber, but completely different kind of topic here, but Uber is rolling out an opportunity for their drivers to get some more money. So what they're doing is they are allowing their drivers to do these display ads on top of their cars. You've seen them on top of taxis or, sometimes some other Lyft or Uber cars, but they were, previously available through some other networks, but not through Uber specific. So Uber's launching this with Adomni. I think that's how you said it, Adomni. Mm-hmm. And so this is called the Uber Out of Home. And they can put these units, they're like the two-sided internet connected screens on the top of vehicles. So they can take into consideration, the audience that's around them, the location that they are, and display different ads there. And they're going to launch this first here in Atlanta, Phoenix, and in Dallas. And then they have plans to launch it in some other cities after that. So for the pilot program, you can actually go to Uber or Adomni's websites to purchase advertising at this point in time. And then the second quarter of this year, they are looking to roll out Amobi and Zeta Global programmatic purchasing. So if you want to go through those DSPs, the inventory will be available there. So the Uber drivers will get $300 for installing the unit, another $100 each week they drive more than 20 hours. And then after that, it'll be paid out, after the pilot program, it'll be paid out based upon like how much they drive. So I think this is interesting to me, but one of the last trips I came back from, I got in my Uber or Lyft, and I remember the car had like the giant screen on top, and I was kind of embarrassed to get in. Honestly, I was like, I felt like I'm getting in a billboard. But then after a second, I was like, well, if they're making a couple extra bucks here just for putting that on, their car, then I guess that it's, I get it, right? Mm-hmm. Every buck counts when you're driving Uber and stuff. So, I think it'll start to probably just be the norm for a lot of these cars, especially if it's something that's kind of magnetic that they can take off when they're not driving and, put back on when they are driving. I think that gives them a little bit of flexibility, obviously, but, that's how all the taxis are that you see in New York and other places. So I imagine that, this is just going to become more of the norm. And, the difference is that this is digital and it can change, and, you don't have to do anything about like really in terms of maintenance. There's probably minimal maintenance because you're not changing out a static sign all the time. So it makes a lot of sense. And obviously it'll make a lot of money for Uber as well. Oh, and one other cool feature that I wanted to mention is that Adomni's network can also put the same ad that's on the sign on the car on a nearby billboard kind of at the same time. So I guess people are seeing it in multiple places. So more brand recognition and bigger impact. So yeah.
Yeah. So, so, I mean, I think this just speaks to, we've covered a lot of these types of things that weren't directly connected to Uber or Lyft over the last couple of years, but now obviously they're getting directly into it and helping kind of the drivers make more money. So, Lyft just recently announced also they've acquired a company called Halo Cars, which is their sort of version of this. And the other thing is, because this is digital with Uber and Adomni, is that they can geofence these ads as well. So the ads that you see are local or can be local to the area, to the local businesses and so on. So it's not necessarily just big global ad spend or even regional, but can be very local as well. And I love what you just said too, like this ability to sort of tie that into other out-of-home displays in the area and having the same ad sort of resonate as you're moving around. So, I mean, I think this is great. I think for the drivers, this is, yet another way to kind of just make a little extra from this. And I think it's reasonable. I mean, $300 for installing the unit. Okay, it's a one-time thing, but $100 a week. So it's an extra $100 a week plus, and that's just for 20 hours. If you do more than 20 hours, you can make more money, right? So, I mean, everybody could use an extra $100 a week, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. There you go. All right. Our final story now, sticking with sort of the out-of-home industry, JCDecaux in Australia has executed a pretty interesting campaign for Yoplait, the yogurt brand. So this is on George Street in Sydney, Australia. So George Street's one of the main thoroughfares, retail thoroughfares there, if you've never been. And yeah, so we've got this out-of-home display. Basically, it asks customers, basically it's a campaign to offer them a free smoothie. And so they have to stand in front of the unit. And then the display, basically using facial recognition cameras and voice, basically asks them to either smile or frown for a free smoothie. And then customers can, if they do that, they can get a coupon that they can then go to a local retailer around the corner, basically, and redeem for their free smoothie. So I think it works well in the sense of, you just go up there, you engage with the brand, you smile, you get your coupon, it drives traffic to the local retailer, which is obviously the goal there. It's good for the retailer as well. So I'm sure they're, sort of participating in it in some way. There has been some pushback on the campaign relative to the privacy issues as well, with faces and so on. I feel like, especially in this part of the world, more and more this is the norm. And I think, as I said earlier in the FCC story, I think, we just need to get comfortable with these things. This is not the first type of campaign like this in Australia. On the George Street thoroughfare there, they did a similar campaign, with, are you hungry kind of thing, or hangry, I think it was, right? We had covered a while ago. Yeah, so, it obviously worked. It obviously drives traffic, to the display, to the brand, and gets people engaged. And I'm sure it doesn't cost them a whole heck of a lot to give away a free smoothie. So.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, like, of all the things that they could do to give you a free smoothie, like, I don't know, put in your phone number to get, smoothie recipes and get a free smoothie, or put in your email address, or, anything. They chose the facial recognition part. And my question is like, well, what are they using the data for? So they they're taking this picture of you smiling or frowning, and then what are they using that for? Like, how are they leveraging that in the future? I think that's why, to me, it's a little bit of a murky campaign, because it's like, well, what are you going to, I mean, at the end of the day, like, what are they going to do? They can say that I got a smoothie. Okay, great. But still, it's like your likeness, it's your picture. Mm-hmm. Do they own it? Do they get to use it for social media? What do they get to do with it? Right. So I feel like there's questions in my mind of, how effective this is, or like how it resonates with people engaging. And would they have higher engagement if they did something a little bit different? But I mean, I like seeing new things. I like that they're trying something. I think there's been better use cases of facial recognition maybe, but.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of people using it for payments, through kiosks. KFC in China is one of them. Kind of going back to them. But at the end of the day, this stuff is coming. The issue is proper articulation of what you're doing with the data, how you're storing that data, are you reselling that data? Those are the things, right, that need to just be clear and transparent. Otherwise, I think it's fine. I think it's something that we need to get comfortable with, we need to get used to, and we should embrace, because there's a lot of fun things that can happen with it. So yeah, there you go. So that's our show for this week. You've been listening to Location Weekly, episode number 454. Thank you for listening and watching. If you have story ideas, if you have feedback, if you have criticism, whatever it is, we want to hear about it. Please reach out to us. We're easily found on all the social channels. And we just thank you for listening and watching every week. Have a great week, everybody. We'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.